Cheri Jo Bates was a freshman at Riverside City College, and she was murdered on the night of October 30th, 1966. And in this video, we're going to lay out all the details of the crime, and at the end of the video, I will tell you who murdered her. The Riverside police detectives knew right away who was murdered because Cheri was found on top of her purse, and they opened up her purse and found her identification. She was found lying face down in a dirt driveway off Terracina between two old frame houses owned by the college, and she was discovered at 6:30 a.m. on Halloween morning by Riverside City College groundskeeper Cleophas Martin, who was operating a sweeping machine on the road in front. A man's wristwatch was 10 feet from the body. Drops of dry blood were found in the driveway, indicating to police that her slayer walked back to Terracina after killing her. Here's a photograph of the watch, and she wasn't murdered at 9:07 a.m. because the watch was working, and that's when the photograph was taken, at 9:07 a.m. approximately. The engine to Cheri Bates's VW Beetle had been tampered with to prevent it from starting. The keys were in the ignition when the car was found at the college. The police had been able to definitely establish that the 3 books found in Cheri Jo's car on Monday morning had been checked out on Sunday. The library is open from 1 to 5 p.m., then reopens at 6 till 9 p.m. Here's a better look at librarian Harry Bach, and he looks a little bit like the Zodiac killer sketch. The black numbers are the street addresses on Terracina Drive. So 3608 is Riverside City College, 3680 is the crime scene, 3692 is the house right next to the crime scene, and the rest of the house is going towards Magnolia. And then the facts that I wanted to tell you were that the library was inside the quad building, that there's no houses north of that street because there's a steep embankment and a football field or a practice football field that was there. And then on the top left corner is the Shelley Lynn Apartments, where someone heard a scream that night. Here's a photograph looking from the back of the houses, looking out towards the street. And you can see there's no houses on the other side of the street, and you can see that fence or railing there because there's an embankment right there. So that's there to protect from cars going over the edge. And then here's a side-by-side view of looking from the front compared to looking from the back alley. In addition to the car being left unlocked and the windows rolled down, the key was in the ignition. The car was found parked in front of the college library, not far from where the body was found. The girl may have run up the driveway from the street to escape her assailant. There were scuffs in the gravel on the driveway. At the time of her death, she was wearing faded red capris, a long-sleeve pale yellow blouse with a ribbon tie at the throat, white sandals with straps around the heels, and between the first and second toes, and she was carrying a large red tan woven straw bag, which I said earlier was a purse. Preliminary analysis of the scrapings from beneath the fingernails of the dead girl tend to show the murderer is a white male. The stomach contains at least 100 milliliters of thick food with particulate food particles in which are easily recognized reasonably large pieces of apparent beef, along with vegetable particles being either and or celery and onion, and white curd-like particles floating in the gastric contents that appear to be either milk or cottage cheese. Examined at the site, skin surface cool, rigor present in all extremities, but more so in the lower superior members. Liver temperatures 26 and 28 degrees. The decedent had several hairs removed from the base of her right thumb. She was stabbed multiple times in the chest, once in the back, and 3 times across her throat. Here the watch reads 12:23 p.m. And here the watch reads 12:49 p.m. And a little bit of information about the wristband. It was 7 inches long, and it broke away from the face, but it still was there. Cheri Jo Bates was a varsity cheerleader at Ramona High School in 1965, her junior year, and she graduated in June of 1966. And then she continued her education at Riverside City College in September of 1966. Cheri Jo had an older brother, Michael Bates, and he graduated from Ramona High School in 1965, and then he joined the Navy. In the months previous to that day, he was in training. Cheri Jo's boyfriend, who is 2 years older than her and graduated in 1964 from Ramona High, and he completed his AA degree at Riverside City College and went on to San Francisco State College, and he was big into football. The weekend before her murder, Cheri had gone with her boyfriend's parents to visit him at San Francisco State College. While there, he proposed, and Cheri came home, as friends described, on cloud 9. One of Cheri's best friends, Stephanie Gutman, was an RCC student also, and she had graduated from Ramona High School in 1965. Stephanie said that Cheri called her once at 3 p.m. and again at 3:45. Cheri asked her to accompany her to the library to pick up a few books. Stephanie said that she didn't go. Cheri's father telephoned Stephanie at 7 p.m. asking if Stephanie knew where his daughter was. He called again at 6:50 a.m. in the morning and said Cheri had not come home. Now, a fellow student from Ramona High School, who graduated in 1965, was Walter, and a few of his friends were in the library from 7:15 until 9 o'clock when it closed, and they did not see Cheri Bates, whom they all knew. They said they saw 4 men dressed in work clothes sitting on a fence across from the spot where Miss Bates's car was found, but they did not know them. Now here's the Riverside Police's theory. The suspect was a rejected suitor who might have had some friendly dates with Cheri and ended up taking the relationship more seriously than she did. Cheri's engagement made him angry. The suspect knew Cheri would be at the library that night based on statements made by friends and informants. The suspect disabled her car, then pretended to be passing by so he could offer to help. It would be an opportunity to talk to her alone. Now, the Riverside police suspected Bill Bennett because there was some gossip about him being out that Sunday night playing basketball or being with his friends, and he said he was going to go over to the library to see Cheri Bates. I think there's such pressure to solve the murder that the police often jump to the first person they come across. And I believe Bill Bennett had nothing to do with Cheri's murder. "5 days after the murder of Cheri Jo Bates, she was laid to rest at Crestlawn Memorial Park on the west side of Riverside." Two weeks after Cheri's murder, the police did this major recreation of that night, and they cordoned off the whole area and had everybody that went to the library that night go again and park in the same places and do the same things. And after this was done, several students said they saw a heavy-set, bearded man that was there the night of the murder, but wasn't there during the reenactment. And they also mentioned this vehicle. So here's a similar vehicle, a Studebaker, that they saw there that night that wasn't there for the reenactment. Now, about a year earlier, in 1965, a young woman was stabbed, Rosalind Atwood, and she described her assailant as a young white man in his early 20s and asked to give her a ride, and she refused, and then she was attacked. And the attack occurred about 9:40 p.m. Now, 4 weeks after the murder, someone mailed 2 typed letters, one to the newspaper, the local newspaper, and one to the Riverside Police Department. And what they were was carbon copies of an original letter typed that wasn't mailed.
Now, some of the language in the typed confession letter and Zodiac's future letter have similarities, such as it uses the word "I shall," and then it says scream, twitch, and squirm, and twitch is misspelled the same way in both writings.
In the typed confession letter, it states that the middle wire to the distributor was pulled, and the police said it was true that the center wire of the distributor had been disconnected. The FBI have identified some of the prints as belonging to Cheri Bates. The other prints found in the car were made by individuals who so far have not been identified. During the month of December 1966, while removing several desks from the Riverside City College library, one of the custodians observed a poem written on one of the desks, which reads as follows: "Sick of living, unwilling to die, cut, clean, if red, clean, blood spurting, dripping, spilling, all over her new dress. Oh well, it was red anyway. Life drowning into an uncertain death. She won't die. This time someone will find her. This time someone will find her. Just wait till next time. R.H." Six months after the murder, there was a big special write-up in the newspaper about Cheri's murder and it not being solved. And this letter and two similar letters were mailed to the Riverside Police, the local paper, the Press Enterprise, and the father of Cheri Jo Bates. And there was a lot of speculation that this was the Zodiac's writing and stuff to that nature. But it turned out to be just some sick practical joke. And the author was found out to be San Bernardino resident Michael Select. And he did it as a sick joke. About 1 year after Cheri Jo Bates' murder, the newspaper published another story, and Mary Huntz wrote a letter to the editor about that story and claimed to know who killed Cheri Jo Bates. And there's a little confusion because she used her middle name, Patricia Huntz, and she was a student classmate of Michael Select, and she felt like he was the murderer of Cheri Jo Bates. One of the suspects of the murder of Cheri Jo Bates is Russ Sullivan, because he attended RCC at the time. He worked at the library at the time that she was murdered. Michael Ray Swinehart, who went by the nickname Mickey, is my runner-up for who murdered Cheri Jo Bates. Now, it's a little complicated, but here's what I think happened. Michael Swinehart attempted to kill this woman, Rosalind Atwood, and the police determined that Roland was guilty. And they interrogated him and basically forced him into confessing to the attack on her. And he was in jail from March 1966 until 1968, so he couldn't have murdered Cheri Jo Bates. Now, if you look at Michael Swinehart's yearbook photograph compared to the sketch of the man that attacked Mary Atwater, you can see the resemblance, and you can see this is the man that did that. Flake Crawford Casto is the man that killed Cheri Jo Bates. Before Cheri Jo Bates moved to Riverside, Flake Casto's family lived at that same address, 4195 via San Jose. And then they moved because Flake's father was in the Air Force, and they moved to Georgia at a military base there. And so he attended his first few years of high school in Georgia. And then the family moved back to Riverside his junior and senior year in high school, and he attended Ramona High School, where he met or knew Cheri Jo Bates. On October 22nd, Flake married Kathleen at St. Catherine's Catholic Church, where Cheri Jo Bates attended. And then they went off and honeymooned, and then Flake returned the weekend that Cheri Jo Bates was murdered. A little more than a year after Cheri Jo Bates' murder, Flake Casto was arrested for the attempted rape of a woman in San Diego. In 1974, Flake was arrested for attempted rape at the University of California, Riverside, where he was hanging out in the parking lot and following students to the dorm room. And after serving 5 years in prison, he moved to Northern California, where years later he was arrested for rape again and placed in jail for a long sentence. And you can see when he was in high school, he looked very proper and clean cut, but then he kind of went crazy. Well, this ends this episode of Unsolved, and there might be a short episode tomorrow, Saturday night, why I no longer believe that the murder of Cheri Jo Bates was done by the Zodiac killer.